I'm going to move on to regulating open burning. And this one is a classic example of why we need something like this. And Justin, you went through and you pulled this together. Give us a little background, and then I'm going to talk about what we found out last year when we were trying to maintain our fields over there, and there was a conflict between Miami Township and the village over what is open burning. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, I mean, to go back on the code of ordinances, it's been a year-long process. So to your point, adopting basic code is adopting model ordinances.
And that's what we did every year.
What Mayor Burkholz showed is our code of ordinances, which is model policies plus all of our locally legislated ordinances. If we pass an ordinance that mirrors or conflicts with something in our model policy, ours takes precedent. And so that's the final product. The ordinance we just read. Part of that review process over last year was the law director, American League of Publishing, and myself reading through and identifying gaps. Ordinances we don't have, things that we can't regulate that most municipalities do. So the right-of-way ordinance is one of those gaps that we need to fill. This regulating open burning is another gap we need to fill. We need to address as a municipality. So this policy is drafted not to circumvent Ohio Fire Code or the EPA standards or the Ohio Revised Code, but to identify our expectations and what's allowed for open burning. Like to think that our community has an expectation that if they want to have a controlled fire pit or a propane fire pit, or they want to fire a grill up, they're fine to do that. But if they want to burn their yard off, or if they want to have a bonfire, that's not safe, and we don't want to allow that. And if we are going to allow that, we want to have some sort of permitting process to make sure that they have the appropriate water source, the fire department knows, things like that. So, I mean, that's the heart of the purpose behind this ordinance here.
And let me give you a couple of examples. So, currently, the Miami Township Fire Department operates on the state fire marshal regulation. That is only enforceable in an unincorporated area. They have tried to enforce it in the village of Cleves. So technically, you're not supposed to be burning almost the entire year. And last year, we had a situation where we were trying to, and it was controlled, okay? We were burning off the fields over at the park, and we were shut down by the fire department. And at that time, I talked to the fire chief, and I went ahead and did what he asked me to do, which was called the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. And the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, the minute they found out we were a village, and in fact they said it doesn't apply. Okay, so if it doesn't apply, then we got to take a look at what this current ordinance have to say. That's where the gap came in. We didn't have an ordinance. Okay, we didn't have an ordinance. So we need an ordinance, because I can also tell you, and this goes back about 3 or 4 years, I was working out in my yard and I contacted the Miami Township Fire Department wanting to be able to burn off some stuff along the not US 50, but East State. They told me no. And I didn't do it. Okay, they told me no, I didn't do it. I want to obey the law. I want to obey our fire department. They're there to protect us. But what about burning? For example, one of the things I got early on, and was over here on Morgan Street, somebody tore down a deck and they wanted to burn that on their property. And I told them, I said, well, I don't think the Miami Township Fire Department's gonna like that. I'm pretty sure the EPA isn't gonna want you to do that. But honestly, I don't know what the answer is. And to get to that answer, we had to have an ordinance. And in this particular ordinance, if you're trying to have a little fire in your backyard, you're gonna be able to do that, okay? As long as under control, you're gonna be able to do that. But you're not gonna be able to burn, according to, I think, this ordinance, yard waste and other things like that. Am I correct in that?
Only, yeah, and, it can't exceed 5 feet in diameter, 3 feet in height, burning only clean, dry, seasoned wood, natural gas, or equipment.
So that's what it is, all right? Now, I don't think the fire department has any issue with that, okay? I've talked with the fire department. The thing is, do our residents have an issue with it? And if they do, that's a good reason for that to be coming down to our council meeting. If they object to this ordinance, they should have a right to tell us why they objected. And so that's why under ideal situations, you're supposed to have 3 readings, okay? But normally when you have 3 readings, okay, you're going to have more council meetings than we currently hold in our village. So we are counting this as one, and Justin and I talked about this before. We were gonna do 3 meetings on this regardless. Okay? There's some things that are an emergency that you need to deal with as an emergency because it deals with public safety. I don't think any of these, the right of way or this fire pit or fire, ordinance, whatever you want to call it, open burning ordinance. None of those generally are unless you start burning somebody's house down. And so I just want to make sure we're getting our ordinances in line so that we as a village aren't liable. And I think we could have been liable with absolutely no ordinance in place. We didn't have it. So I hope that answers anybody's questions. Mr. Oppenheimer.
I don't think it's your intention to be sticklers on nitpicking things, but I guess the term yard waste, I have a lot of trees on the back of my property. A branch falls off and I cut it up in little pieces. Is that yard waste or is that something else?
That kindling for a small little fire pit.
I've got a good sized fire pit,
Yeah.
not 5 feet, it's 4 feet.
I think, natural brush that falls back, that you're going to burn is seasoned, it'll catch, it's not putting off a noxious gas. As long as you keep it within the height requirements, I think that would qualify as, dry seasoned wood.
So like a burn barrel, but there's quite a few people in my neighborhood that have burn barrels, I'm one of them.
If you're burning clean, dry, seasoned wood, then there's no problem with it as long as it's, with it contained and it doesn't exceed 5 feet in diameter, the flames 3 feet in height out of the control area.
Are there any other questions or comments on any of those during the first reading? Okay.